Good morning. It is Friday, December 1, 2017. I am Mark Allenbaugh, and this is SentencingStats.com's weekly roundup. Today, we are going to cover the guilty plea of Michael Flynn, which is leading all the news over the last hour or so. General Flynn pled guilty about an hour ago in federal district court in the District of Columbia, as you can see here, to one count of 1001, 18 U.S.C. 1001, which is the false statements charge. It carries no mandatory minimum and a maximum of 5 years imprisonment. We can see here, and I'm not going to go through actually what he's charged with, but you can see the extent of the information here. An information is different than an indictment. Generally, those who are cooperating with the government against other individuals are charged with an information, and they waive their right to be indicted by a grand jury. So just the mere fact that this is an information very clearly and unequivocally says that he is cooperating with the government against other individuals that have yet to be indicted. So what sentence, the purpose of today's presentation is what sentence might he expect? So the first thing we do is we look at the sentencing guidelines here. And a 1001 charge generally goes to 2B 1.1, which covers all sorts of fraud and false statements. But once you scroll down to subsection C of 2B 1.1, there is this language here, which in English says, if the false statement really fits in a better part of the guidelines, then use that other guideline. And here, the way the information is written, clearly this has to do with matters involving the government. So what we would do then is go to 2C 1.1, which involves fraud involving the deprivation of the intangible right to honest services of public officials. This would be the guideline that ultimately would cover his offense conduct. Nonetheless, you would go to 2B 1.1 first and then look at the cross-reference and see if 2C 1.1 or potentially obstruction of justice would apply. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that 2C 1.1 ultimately would apply, even though 2B 1.1 is the primary guideline. So he's going to look at a base offense level of 14 because he was a public official. And then if we scroll down here, he is also going to receive another 4 levels here because he had high-level decision-making or a sensitive position, going again out on a limb, national security advisor to the President of the United States. Not only is high level, but probably is one of the most, if not the most sensitive position one could have. So he will, 14 plus 4 gives you an 18. If you're not in an 18 already, you would have an 18. And no other obvious, no other specific offensive characteristics apply here. Arguably, he could get a leadership role or a management role, but he wasn't charged with a conspiracy, so that wouldn't apply. So his final, at least, wouldn't apply the way the information is written here. All of this, of course, is subject to change as he continues to cooperate and ultimately is sentenced probably many, many months from now. Even it could be over a year from now. So at an offense level 18, because he's pled guilty and he clearly has accepted responsibility, at least so far, and he doesn't retract on that acceptance before sentencing, his offense level will be reduced by 3 levels to ultimately an offense level of 15. So, but as we know, the sentencing guidelines are merely advisory. So let's see ultimately what he really is looking at for, by the way, an offense level of 15 is 12 to 18 months imprisonment under the guidelines. But here is our handy dandy tool here at SentencingStats.com. For expediency purposes, I've already filled in a lot of the stuff here. So if you're going to go to our tool to see, well, what would, you're representing Mr. Flynn, what possibly would he be looking at here? Well, here you just put in some initial demographics that I've put in. This isn't mandatory, but it is helpful to you to put all this in. Then we go to the offense level. You could choose the lead statute. The lead statute here is 18 U.S.C. 1001. This is the way you would enter it on our website. It's just 18, which is the title, and then the section number 1001. And then you could switch it on or off if you want to filter by the false statements. The statutory maximum here, you could filter by that if you wanted to. I've chosen to do that here to try to find those that are most identical, or most similar to, I should say, to the way Mr. Flynn has been charged, General Flynn. Statutory maximum here is 60 months or 5 years. And of course, we know that he is pleading guilty. And we're just going to lump in the whole world of guilty pleas. You could turn this off, or you could choose, for example, trial or something like that if you wanted to do that. But let's just look at guilty pleas here. And as I noted at the beginning, the primary guideline or the lead guideline would be 2B1.1 before any cross-reference. To ease any confusion about cross-references and stuff, the way we filter the guidelines here is essentially the way the Sentencing Commission has coded it. So we look at a particular variable to see what the lead guideline is before any cross-references. That way you can capture a larger data set than otherwise. We noted that his final offense level, if he's at I should change this here, not at a 13, but he will be at a 15. So we can see we're recalculating here. So what we have found here, those sentenced under 2B1.1 that were convicted of 18,000 U.S.C. 1001, subject to a 60-month statutory maximum, who pleaded guilty, were sentenced under 2B1.1 in criminal history 1 with a final offense level of 15. We have found from 2006 through 2016, so that's 11 years of data covering over 850,000 federal defendants, there were exactly 48 of those nationwide, 2 in the District of Columbia circuit, which is identical to the District of Columbia. So there are only 48 that are identically situated to General Flynn. But nonetheless, that's enough for us to get some statistical data. So what would we like to look at here? Well, because it's, there's not very many here, we could just look at more at a cumulative analysis and rather than a trend analysis. A trend analysis is going to be by year, and because we're covering 11 years with only 48 total cases, you're only going to get an average of around just over 4 cases per year. So that's really not enough to run averages by year. It's not going to be very meaningful. So what I tell users is when you're looking at under 150 up here in the national, you should always select cumulative as opposed to trend. So we're going to look at both median and average sentence, and let's look at the cumulatives here. And for geographic, well, we know there's really none in the circuit and district, just 2, so that's going to be very interesting. We're going to look at nationwide, and many appellate courts anyway, when you're using statistics, they're concerned about national disparities as opposed to regional ones. So now the guideline compliance rate, this is going to be of interest to General Flynn, is how often, well actually this isn't really of interest to him anymore because he's already received a 5K. He's not working to try to get a 5K after indictment, which very often occurs. So he and his counsel did something very smart by getting in front of the indictment. As we could see with Paul Manafort, Manafort was indicted, and he ended up having very, very strict, well, first of all, he was subjected to an unannounced visit by some federal officers, as well. Now that he was indicted, he is subject to very, very strict conditions of bail while he goes through the plea and sentencing process. So, and excuse my cold here. So we're going to look at national statistics again on compliance rates. And for the variances, what we're going to do is search by or filter by government sponsored below rates. So what this basically is, it's going to tell us how frequently judges do sentence below the guidelines for 5K 1.1 departures specifically for this group of 48 here. And we already know that Flynn is going to get a cooperation deal, but the real question he's going to be interested in is how much. And what we selected here is the average. We're just going to look at what the average downward departure has been for a 5K for these 48 individuals here that are identical to General Flynn. So now we're generating a report, and as we see here again, the guideline range is 18 to 24 months. We knew that there was 48 in our group that we've identified. The average sentence was only 4 months, and the median was 0 months. Again, the median is basically the halfway point between the data set, or another way of saying it in English is half of the individuals received no prison time or less. As a matter of fact, most, as we'll see, most received no prison time. And the max sentence that somebody did receive was 2 years, which is the top of the guideline range, but wasn't even anywhere close to the statutory maximum, which is 5 years. So just looking at this, the chances of General Flynn actually doing any prison time are low statistically, but we'll readdress that here in a moment. So we can see the median sentence, as we said, is 0. That's why this is blank. Nobody gets sentenced, or at least half do not receive any prison sentence. Here are the averages, or the average for that group of 48. As we said already, that's 4 months. But this, by the way, includes those that received downward variances and those that did not. So we're really concerned with those that received variances. So 46% of the time, as we see here, or nearly half the time for that group of 48, 46% of them received a downward departure for cooperation, like General Flynn. And when they received a downward departure, on average, it was 17 months below the bottom of the guideline range, and the bottom of the guideline range is 18 months here. So if you're cooperating, the chances are very good that you're going to do little to no time here. So readdressing the value, and that's going to really determine be premised on the value of the cooperation. So here General Flynn obviously is providing something extremely valuable to the government as it continues to prosecute individuals in the Russia, or as Special Prosecutor Mueller continues to prosecute people or investigate people for possible collusion with Russia. Now, given the value of his cooperation, statistically speaking, it's a near certainty that he will not receive any prison time, and the most time he can receive at least 1 year of probation up to 3 years of probation, and most likely he'll receive 3 years of probation and probably a stiff fine is my guess here, my speculation. But there's also an argument that he will do time, and that would be, frankly, if the court feels that it needs to send a message, either to him or to others, that for the gravity of the offense here, what he engaged in, nonetheless must warrant some prison time. Although I don't think that's a winner argument, that may be an argument that the government makes. Certainly, that's an argument the government will make if Mr. or General Flynn does not engage in significant cooperation, as he is expected to. One of the problems already that has arisen is a statement that he gave about an hour ago when he was pleading guilty that seemed to really mitigate some of what he's done. The court may not. I was surprised that he even gave a statement at his plea allocution. Usually, it's just a judge asking the defendant whether or not he or she understands what they're doing, and that they had advice of counsel, and they understood what counsel said, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not getting into anything of substance regarding the offense. That's saved for sentencing. So he seemed to already do his sentencing allocution, or we got a preview of it, and it wasn't a very good one, at least in my opinion. So that could come back to bite him. He may want to reconsider that if he really wants to get no prison time here. But statistically speaking, he's not going to do any prison time. But of course, all that is subject to change depending on what develops over the next few months. Well, at any rate, that's my quick analysis here at Sentencing Stats based upon U.S. Sentencing Commission data, publicly available data files. Here at Sentencing Stats, we provide what we think is a very useful and unique tool to attorneys as well as their clients and the general public to go in and research and see how sentencing is done at the federal level. Thank you very much.